thank you to everyone who stayed with us. I know it's been a long day of sustainable fashion fun. So we're going to finish off with a panel discussion because I like to use the opportunity to get in, you know, I still call them my students. I know you're not my students anymore, but our alumni, because thankfully, there are more people in the world beyond Amy Powney and Mother of Pearl who are doing sustainable fashion and who are doing it really well. And part of the reason I invited this group of fashion designers is because they all take their own approach to sustainable fashion. And so that's what I really want them to talk about. Really, you know, we've seen Amy's journey. I know that's a bit of a cliche word, but it's kind of what it is. How she, you know, her background and all her influences that led her on to take that particular path. And so what I want to hear from each one of our panelists. So first of all, I'll briefly introduce them. Georgia Wintle graduated last year from our course, already a working fashion designer and with lots of big plans as well.
Hopefully.
Matilda Isdahl is one of our current students. She has studied for 2 years in Norway, in Oslo. She's come over here to do her final year. And she's already been on this path, and she's now kind of working at the culmination of her, this will be your third year of your degree. Amber Jones graduated 2 years ago, and she's done lots of stuff since, so I can't wait to hear more about it. And some of you have already met Jess Evans already, Jess Evans Lewandowska, who did the biodesign workshop for us. Currently studying for at St Martin's for a biodesign master's. So I thought, should we, and we also have, you know, they should be in the order of appearance here. One garment representing the work of each of these designers. So I thought we would start, maybe we should start with you, Amber.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, can you tell us about how you came to work sustainably?
Yeah, of course. So while I was studying here, I was kind of already on the path of wanting to do better for the planet. I was very focused on the planet aspect of it. And then I did the placement year here, and I spent 6 months in India working with an artisanal hand block printing company who are all fair trade and treating the workers right and doing sustainability and making it look easy, because it kind of is, to be honest, I think. And that really changed the way I was looking at things. I got a lot more focused on the people aspect of it and how we're treating people in the industry and how we should be working with the people that are creating our fabrics, our clothes, and just being as involved in every aspect of it as we can. And so that really changed things for me, is working with them. And the red floral jacket is actually made with fabric from them. So I worked with the people that printed this, and watching them work is, you can watch videos of it, but seeing it in person it's hard to describe. You can't put it into words. Watching them work and the pride they take in their work as well, it just changed everything for me. And now I'm really focused on craft and collaboration with all kinds of makers.
So can you tell us a bit more about what you've been doing since you graduated?
Yeah, so I first went and did a master's in business and management, which was not for me at all, because I don't want to be an accountant. I don't want to be exploiting people for maximum profit. And then I did launch with USW, which helps people that want to start up their own businesses. They provide you with mentors, from social media marketing to how you mentally deal with running a business and handle it, and also a nice bit of funding to help me get started, so I have the machines and stuff to get going. And that's what I've been doing now. So I'm working out of my front room at home, shooing my cat out of the way every time I try and work, and collaborating with as many people as I can. So I've got people that are making charms for me, because that's what they love doing. I hope to get involved with people that like doing weaving and embroidery and all these kind of things, and just trying to create a community that are helping each other, looking out for each other in every way possible. Yeah.
So it really is a completely new way of doing business as well. Because I know you were keen to get those business skills, weren't you?
Yeah.
But actually then seeing it's not just the fashion industry there's something wrong with, it's also the way that our current capitalist system works.
Definitely,
to change.
Trying to move away from that and focus on as much as we can. And just focus on the people, what they want out of it, what they want to be doing with their lives, what's making them happy, making sure they're looking after themselves financially, mentally, physically, and doing what they love, because that's what we should all be doing. Unfortunately, living in a world where we've got to pay for surviving doesn't always make that possible, but with time, hopefully we can get back to a place where it is.
Great, thank you. Jess, can you tell us a bit about what led you to sustainability?
Yeah, so I did fashion design here, and I became really interested in sustainability during my second year. I discovered a company called Bolt Threads who was making silk from spider silk and kind of mimicking it and doing it that way, and fell down a rabbit hole which has basically started this entire journey. I went to Australia during my third year of uni. I did an industrial year, and there I really experienced the bushfires that were happening during 2019-2020, and I was really deeply impacted by that and the smoke that was hanging over the city and what that meant for people living in it, but then also for the environment. And experiencing that was a real turning point for me, because it felt so much more real than the bubble I'd been in when I was in education constantly. And it then led to me creating collections around protective materials, but also looking at how we can work with nature. So I then started looking into working with mycelium and working with bacteria. And now I do a lot of stuff working with algae. So it led me on this path to do the masters, where I'm now trying to specialize more specifically in how I can integrate those organisms into making different materials or products, redefining systems, and really looking at this whole overview of how we can work sustainably and regeneratively, even bringing nature to the forefront of every conversation rather than it all being human-centered, basically. Yeah.
So how, as a designer at the moment, are you, I mean, you obviously touched on it already, but how does sustainability figure in your design practice at the moment?
Sustainability is the front and center of everything. It's almost like it's so ingrained, I don't even think about it as a factor anymore. It's just like, what material can I work with that is good for the planet, that I can use and also give back to the planet for? What can that turn into a product or service or something as? You know, I always start with nature. I don't start with the end goal of creating something. You know, I've definitely got my own preferences and interests which define where the work goes and like the decisions that I make and different boundaries that I place on it. But sustainability is just so central, it's almost not even a topic. It is, you know, it's how everything I think should function. You know, it shouldn't, as Amy was saying, like, it shouldn't even be a thing. It should just be a natural part of it, you know. So yeah, that's kind of how I try to approach it.
I think also what's so interesting about your work is how you really, you know, the fashion industry can be very siloed. We've seen that in the documentary, just for example, how, you know, the spinning is completely separate from the, you know, the weaving to the, you know, it's also siloed. But what you are doing is you're not just, I mean, it's not just that, it's also thinking, well, science, technology, fabric, it's really not, it's kind of really breaking down all those boundaries.
Definitely. Yeah, I think collaboration is such a core part of the future and how society needs to function going forward. As you were saying earlier, it's about bringing all of these different people together who love doing all of their individual things and then joining the dots. And that's what I'm finding more and more as a role for myself as a designer. You know, I don't actually, like I do design, but I link things. I join different dots together and I solve problems by collaborating with so many different people where on their own they can't solve an issue. But if we bring 3 of us together, we can create a really, really cool solution to something that's actually very complex. And that I find so exciting. I really think collaboration between loads of different fields and like really contrasting fields is the future, honestly.
Yeah. So now I want to ask you, Matilda, you take a very different approach in a way. But can you talk a bit about, first of all, how your journey to sustainability?
It started with, like, we grew up with recycling. Everything needs to be recycled. It's very important that we put it into place so it's like they can get rid of it in the right way. And we had, growing up, I saw a documentary series that they made in Norway about workers in Bangladesh. So they went there, they collected like a small group of famous people to see how the fashion industry worked. And they were just shocked. I think it shocked like everyone in Norway. Me especially, I got very emotional about that. And I've been always been collecting. If I were to throw any of my clothes away, I would save them. Even I didn't know what to use them for. I didn't want to be a designer at that point, but I just couldn't throw them away because they were like, I got it from my mom, got it inherited by family or something like that. And the pile just kept growing with clothes I didn't know what to do with. So I started like ripping them apart, making fabrics from that instead of throwing them away. Because they always question like, do they really recycle them when you put them in the textile bin? And when I started uni in Norway, fashion design, I saw all the textile waste, like we generated, just us, our class. And I was just like, how this is from one day and we had 2 big like garbage bins, like large ones with fabrics. And I was like, and I have to go out and buy fabric for my toiles. So I just started looking through that instead and had managed to make all my toiles, all my garments from the stuff people threw away, just from that. So I just kept on going, and I felt when I started, we obviously learned more about sustainability, but not like as much. But I just started feeling guilty going to uni, becoming a fashion designer, because I didn't want to contribute to the massive textile waste. So I started using garbage or waste to make my fabrics instead of buying them. Because if I buy more fabrics, they will make more. So I just stopped. I don't buy anything. I just collect them from my own clothes or clothes from my family, friends. Friends started collecting them from work. If they had samples or leftovers, they would just give it to me and I'll figure out. So right now I got like 6 boxes of just fabrics that I sew together for a garment. Like, that's your husband's pants.
I was just
there.
saying that to someone else. The front, the neck piece.
Yeah, neck. Yeah, something like that.
They were my husband's trousers that
Yeah.
were completely
you
worn
gave them
out.
to me like a week ago or 2. Yeah, so that turned out to my
So it's
new
about
collection.
seeing the potential, the creative potential in waste
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about your process, how you construct a garment, how you
mainly
work?
collect, because I always look through my fabrics if all my clothes or the waist for what kind of fabrics they are. So I always keep like the tag of every garment, stick it to a piece of scrap from that, so I know that it's, for example, 100% cotton or anything like that. I don't focus as much on where it's produced as long as it's reused, because then they live longer either way. Because so last year, my last collection, because we had a graduate collection second year in Norway, because we only have 2 years, so I need to complete it here. So we had a graduate collection last year, which I made, I French seamed.
Some of you will know what the French say.
Yeah. Pieces, like scraps together to make a big enough piece of textile to fit like one pattern, just a pattern, not like the big textiles you saw in the movie, but more like it's only fitted to produce that arm. Mm-hmm. Because if I make it bigger, you will have more pieces you need to cut away that are smaller. So I started collecting mainly shirts and denim, which I sewed together to make all my garments.
I think what's so special about your work, Matilda, is how you take something that is, I mean, it's not even things that can be resold secondhand, it's things that are stained, ripped, torn, that are waste, but you honor the material in a way that I think is really, really deep. You respect it by putting your craft into it, your time and your care.
It takes more time than making one from, like, it takes very much time. So you need to and you need to carefully, because it's hard to collect. You can't collect the same types of shirts. You have many different shirts which you have to put together into one textile, so everything needs to complement each other as well. So you need to, and you can't plan any colors because you just use what you have really and what you can get. But all of the shirts I collected, they had yellow stains, like men's shirts. They throw them away because they are stained. But I just cut away the pieces I can't use, and I collect all the buttons, all the things I can from I got. Yeah, so I don't buy anything. Yeah,
so it's this, I mean, I think your work really is truly upcycling, and upcycling is a big trend at the moment, but sometimes it feels like maybe
I don't like it as a trend, but
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that should be your work. Really, is the true meaning of upcycling.
Yeah,
it's taking something that has no or very little value, that people actually, like I've spoken to my students about, people actually pay. Charity shops have to pay people to get rid of this stuff. Whereas you actually show how it can become something truly beautiful and worth saving.
Yeah, I've been to lots of different charity shops here, and I got to look through all of them, the waste they didn't want, and I've collected that for this collection. So that's the pant, and the half zip is pillowcases, which are perfectly fine. 100% cotton, very comfortable, easy to work with, and I just sew them together in different ways. So that's just this year's pin tucks, because French seam takes too much time. Yeah.
And last but not least, Georgia, what was your journey to sustainability?
It kind of didn't start as everyone else's has. I kind of wasn't aware of it, and I think I took that sort of stuff for granted because I grew up in the country, so I just thought everything was natural and everything was just the way I lived, the way I went through my childhood growing up was kind of, you did recycle and you did do these things and you were out in nature all the times and you appreciate your animals and stuff. And then when I came to uni, it kind of was on the flip side. I was like, oh, I'm in Cardiff, I've got all these shops around me, this is going to be great. And then I went on my placement year and I did a few different placements and I went to one who claimed to be designed and made in the UK, which I thought, that's great, it's UK based, we don't have much in the UK anymore, it's all gone overseas. And they also claimed to be sustainable and they had a really big impact. They recycle all their packaging and they try and use more eco fabrics. And then I got there and everything is bought in Fruit of the Loom. They buy it in for 50p or less a piece. I was sewing on a little badge and then they were sending it out and they were selling it for 50 quid.
Wow.
And every single piece that they bought in came in a plastic bag that said on it recyclable. And I said, well, where's your recycling bin then? So I'll put all this in the recycling. They were like, oh no, just put it in a black bag and chuck it in the normal bin, they'll never know. And even thinking of it now, it just makes me sad and angry. I'm just like, it really, really upset me in a way that I didn't think it would. And I sort of thought, I can't do this. I can't live like that. And everyone was just buying it. And this brand sells so much stuff. And I think that really pointed into a focus of mass consumerism. People don't understand what they're buying. They don't know what people have made, what effort's gone into stuff. And I really saw the impact of actually no one knows what they're buying. They see a t-shirt, they buy it. They use it a few times, and like Matilda said, it gets stained, or, people don't know how to sew on a button. So if a button falls off, they'll throw away the whole shirt. And it just really made me think, no one has any value in clothing. No one holds any value for the people who make it, the time it takes, what impact it's making on people and planet. And I sort of was like, no, I can't do this. And then I was very lucky to have an internship for 6 months with a sustainable company. And it made me see, actually, yes, admittedly, it's a lot more time, it's a lot more effort. 9 times out of 10, it's a lot more money. Like we saw in the film, that one buyer was like, oh, they're just denim jeans, but they're so much more expensive than a normal pair of jeans. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, because that's what a pair of jeans should cost. The reason they are so cheap is because they've used children to pick the cotton, or they're not paying people enough. And I'd rather focus on something like that than just buy and buy and buy. So as you said earlier, Torrin, everyone's approach here is different. And I took with my final collection a lot of, I'm going to research these fabrics. I'm not using anything that isn't certified, or if it's not certified, it's going to be secondhand. I really went into depth with it, probably too much of my time. I remember having a talk with you and another lecturer, Fee, and they were like, oh, you've got great research. Where's the sampling, George? I was like, well, I haven't found the fabrics yet.
That's my struggle.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I think people don't realise it until you get into it, and people take it for granted. So I really got into it from that, and since then I've realised how much people don't know about clothes and don't know about production, and it really makes me quite angry. I've tried at home with my family, to, don't buy this and don't buy that, and I've put a ban on altering people's clothes if it's not sustainable. So my one sister is 5 foot, so trousers never fit her, but she bought some from Shein, and I said, I'm absolutely not taking those up. Sorry, I said, I'm not doing that because I don't want you to buy those things. I said, I can't make your choices for you, but you don't know the impact you've made with that, and I'm not gonna take those trousers up. And yes, theoretically, it would be more sustainable if I did, then she could wear them. But I'm like, well, you can just roll it a few times, it'll be fine. So I've had a bit of a weird journey into it, and I just see the importance of it now. And a bit like Jess said, it's kind of second nature to me now that I look at things and think, oh, who made that? How much is it worth? Why is it so little? And, you just become more aware of things, which I think is really what is lacking in the industry, is knowledge about it.
I mean, part of our mission as an educational institution is clearly to make sure that the new generations of designers who are coming in have this. It's not something, it's It's not a branding tool. It is not, and it's not a thing. It's just how you naturally come to approach the world. But also how it's not it really isn't the easy option.
No, definitely not.
It's the important option, though.
But it is an important option, and I think we all know it is the inevitable option.
But I think that even though it takes more time to produce something, I think that's what we need because we have enough clothes. So if everyone just started doing it sustainable, it would take more time for clothes to get on the market. We would have less clothes
That's
out.
one thing I was thinking when I was watching that, and she was complaining about it would take too long. I was like, just extend your deadline,
but
go for the next show. Yeah.
Because everything does just need to be slower. Like, we just run too fast constantly, which is how we're in this cycle at the moment. So if us as like new designers coming in, we can just make everything slower, we then have less seasons. Great.
Yeah,
slow everything down. We have
any,
enough stuff.
But I'm not having any seasons or no, and I won't manage to produce that much because I rely on getting my fabrics from others, like the things you don't use. So I won't. Yeah,
it just doesn't work for you.
No.
But I think the ironic thing now is the fashion industry. It's going so fast. It's too absurd. You know, there's a weekly drop in most of the high street chain and brands. But then you might as well do seasonless. Then you might as well just make things at the right time when, you know, for the consumers who want it, rather than try and fit in with this, you know, incredibly fast-paced, system.
Doesn't that just show the absurdity of fashion, though? It's outrun itself to the extent that fashion doesn't make sense anymore. It's a joke. Like, it's memeable. Like, fashion is memeable these days. Like, it's no longer about what we actually put on our backs. Like, it's about what's going to trend on TikTok, you know?
Yeah. And I don't think the seasons matter that much anymore because seasons now are so different from like 10 years ago, 15. Like, we had minus degrees. Like, we can have cold summers or extremely hot summers, and we can have barely any winter.
Seasons will eventually shift, won't they, with climate change? Like, we just had snow in March, but October's warm, so soon autumn, winter won't be the warm clothes anymore. It'll be the hot clothes. It's going to completely flip on itself because
it's just like a bad loop. Really. Everything.
But it is just consumers, and not just consumers, but
mostly.
And a lot of the businesses, unfortunately, like, business is business, and I understand you've got to run business, and business runs off your profit. You know, you need everything, you need to repay everything. If you want to make more change, you've got to do things, but it's at the cost now that no one values anything. And I think the other day I had a little bit of a paddy, as we all do. I had an outfit in my head and it didn't work. And then my dad said to me, "It's just clothes." And that what he said sat with me for a while. I was like, yeah, it is just clothes. Why am I getting so upset about it? But then I was like, that's what people see it as now. It's not like a valuable garment or something like that. I know, particularly in my collection, I wanted to bring back a lot of craft because it takes a lot of connection from the maker, but also the person wearing it. Like, you want it to be, like, I really love texture, so a lot of my stuff has texture, but I'm like, people don't know how long that takes. And the price that it's at is because of the time it took, the fabrics that I've used, and everything that goes into it. And I think if someone really knows what goes into clothes, people will buy into it more. Like the jumper I've got on that stand, the body fabric. So a lot of workers out in places like Bangladesh and India where they're using, you know, it's a lot of mass consumerism, mass making. If you're unfit for work, whether it's you're ill yourself or you need to look after a family member or whatever happens, they will just say, okay, you can't work then, bye, I'll get someone else in. So a lot of people are then forced into unemployment. This company I found, it was sold through a different company, but it has traceability fully back. So the fibres and everything are organic, everything was traced back. The dyeing is in a closed loop system, which is really, really sustainable in comparison to what loads of others are. And then it's woven by men who have been forced into unemployment, and they do the short shifts and they're paid a fair wage, so that they're not going to be there for like 12 hours. If they've only got 6 hours, they'll do that. And that's what they do. And I was like, I'd rather spend that money on something like that is helping those men who've been forced into unemployment by the industry that I'm trying to fight against than something else. But people don't know that. They could look at my jumper and think, oh, that's a nice fabric.
But then I think that's part of the fun thing that we get to do as designers, is we get to communicate those stories, and we get to give a platform to those stories. You know, we get to tell people about all of that cool stuff that's actually going on, and then try and encourage it, and then we can create actual change, I think. It's all about the story, which is so cool.
I think we all have, we all have enough clothes. So when we want something new, I think we should look for things that have a story, that have a meaning. You know, when someone gives you a compliment, you kind of have, it's always nice when you have a nice story. Yeah. When, you know, did you know that the fabric was made by so-and-so? And, you know, it really is about added something added that also makes it less disposable.
Yeah, exactly. You've got all of these different cool interaction points which you can then have as a consumer, which makes you more proud, I think, of what you're actually wearing and buying. You know, you can stand there and be like, yes, I've made really good decisions and I've maybe spent a little bit more, but I'm going to have this now for forever. And like, I'm excited because for my own self, like my mum's invested in a lot of cool clothes, so I'm actually quite excited to get those later.
Yeah, heirloom.
Like, it's just, but you get those cool stories, you get to have that stuff that's passed down, you know, when she no longer wants it. I've got my own at least 2 different jumpers that I'm really excited to get because she doesn't want to wear them anymore. And you get to have that, and I just think that's what clothing should be about, you know?
I think that's more fun than going shopping. Like
Yeah,
shopping
same.
now
I
is
hate
the most
shopping.
boring thing
It's a terrible
you
hustle.
could do, because everything is just the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only do vintage shopping, or like I save up to buy proper.
Yeah.
You get like a staple piece that's worth the money. But I heard an amazing stat the other day, I can't remember where I heard it from, and it was something like, we have enough clothes on the planet right now to clothe the next 7 generations.
Yeah, I've heard similar things. It's
That,
terrifying.
like, if you put that in your head, like 7 generations, I don't even know what year that would be back from now. I don't want to work it out. I didn't go into fashion to do maths, but like, it's crazy when you think about it. And I think our generation is in a very different generation to the ones before us. So for example, like my granddad, bless his heart, will wear something until there's like 1 thread left. But he was brought up at the end of the war. There was rationing. He couldn't get new clothes. His mum couldn't make him new clothes. So he's got this thing of like, it's good, I'm looking after it, why do I need to get rid of it? And then when it becomes a necessity, or, you know, he wore a really dirty pair of jeans out the other week. We said, Granny, have you got another pair? He went, no. I said, well, let's go buy you one. They'll last you then for 20 years. So I think, you know, our generation has got a lot of change we've got to make. You know, we notice it now, but we're also in a digital era, and we're in that you can make a tap and buy something. You can go into any shop and buy anything, and you can throw it away easily. It's just sad, but it's the easy option for people. And I do respect, actually, I think it's an important point to say that places like Primark and cheaper mass stores, some people can only afford that. There is a need for a cheaper fashion industry.
It's not the fault of the person buying it that that's all they can afford. It's the industry that's
easy,
the issue.
But I think it's, you know, some people are forced into, I can't afford that right now. But I wish there was that option with a more ethical background, because we all know what Primark does. You know, we won't get into that, but you know, there is a need for easier fashion for people, cheaper fashion for people, and I think, like Jess was saying, like maybe working collaboratively, you can make something that is less damaging than 100% polyester, or less damaging than a really intense chemical dyeing process that then gets put out into the environment. It's just extra thought and time and care, and society's too fast and want the easy way out, and that's not going to help us. I mean, the stat on the end of that movie, the 63% growth in the industry by 2030, that stunned me. I was like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want
It's
that
easy
at all.
to forget that not everyone's like us.
But I
Trying to change things.
I think we need to I think people need to be more aware. Like it should be like it's more about politics. Like they need to evolve. Like they need laws. They need to put the knowledge into school, primary school. They need to learn more about it, because I remember my generation didn't learn anything about it at school, but now they do. Like my little brother, he's 5, and he can recycle everything, and he started doing that when he was 3. So that's something they do now, but people are not aware of all the processes. So I think even though there is lots of information about it online, they don't research it. Why should them?
Yeah.
Like they just need a new pair of jeans. Yeah.
It's too easy to just kind of the mindless consumption. We have such an easy access to
Everything.
too many clothes. So, but there's still room for good clothes, I would say. We could obviously talk about this till the cows come home. But I'm really curious to hear if our audience have either questions or thoughts, comments, anything like that. Has anyone got something they want to go in?
I did write them down because I thought I'd forget because I was listening to everybody. So my first question was to you, Angela. Yes. I thought it was really interesting. You mentioned the work you did when you were in India, and you mentioned the term craft. I was reading a report about that. I think it was on WGSN or something recently about the emergence of craft having more value. And is there a difference, do you think, to anybody, between how craft is measured and valued and perhaps design? Because I think it's quite important, isn't it, that we value a lot of those crafts that are so time intensive, and I guess it hasn't had enough focus for some time.
No, definitely not. That's actually part of what I covered in my dissertation here, talking about craft and how when a person makes something, they become more connected to it, and also when it, as we touched upon, when something comes with a story, we're more likely to look after it. If there's a whole story behind a shirt you have and a button falls off, you're not going to want to throw it away. You're going to want to mend it and keep it because you're attached to that story, perhaps even more so than the physical product. And it's one of those things that I spent a lot of time with my dissertation actually researching phrases and terms and terminology, because it's difficult to put into words. And most of like the top research on it essentially said the same thing, that it's hard to fully explain that emotional human connection we have when we make something. Even though we all understand it, we can't fully put it into words. But I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about if you've ever made something, how much it means to you, and you know the value of your own time. And so I've gone a bit off topic. What is that?
Definition between craft and design, and should we give more value to the idea of craft? Which is,
I mean, definitely, of course. I think they go hand in hand. They're not necessarily the opposite of each other. I think it's one thing I really loved about when I was in India. So the creative director, the lady who actually designed all the clothes, she still gave her print master the freedom to, if he was doing something that she'd decided on and decided that those colours weren't actually working, he had the agency to go ahead and change the colour palette to something that he felt worked better, because she respected that he knew the craft better than she did. And I think that's sometimes where things go wrong. We see designers deciding they want something in a specific fabric, in a specific silhouette that doesn't work because that's not how the weave's intended to be. And it's that communication with the makers and the designers who they just need to work, collaboration, again, going back to that, sort of repeating the same rhetoric over and over again now, but definitely, yeah.
And is that okay, one more question?
Yeah.
Jess. Like I said, I wrote it down. So Jess, you were talking, Amy Paddy sort of spoke about the collection that she finally made, the No-Frills collection, being driven by the fabrics that were available. Is that something that you think should happen more in design, that we actually sort of use what we've got access to or what would work in terms of sustainable practices? Do you think there should be more of that?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think we should start with what we have and design from that,
Yeah.
rather than be like, I need to make a shirt today, I will go and find a specific fabric, you know, because then we're actually recognizing our environment, what we've got accessible, what is realistically available, and what's practical to use as well. And then I actually think you can create a lot more interesting outcomes when you let the fabric dictate stuff, you know, stuff that your own inspiration might not have come to naturally, but when you combine all those different things together, you then get something that's even more unique and special for your own work. So I definitely think fibers, materials, organisms, like whatever you're working with, it should all dictate the final outcome. It's one thing I love in my practice, like when I work with algae, bacteria, it's got a mind of its own, you know. I can try and control it as much as I like, but there's only so much I can literally do. Like it will grow how it wants to grow, and there is little I can do for that. So it then always has a different outcome to what I expect, and you have to learn to design around that, which is a fun challenge. Yeah.
It was really interesting, I think, wasn't it, when she mentioned that?
Yeah,
Like collection, 'cause
it's very cool.
We used to be demand driven, okay, whatever you need, you find.
Exactly.
Source it. Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Thanks very much.
Any other? Han, and then Janika.
For anybody, any comments? Through research that I'm doing for current projects, I'm looking at mostly so sustainability is an option, inclusivity is an option, diversity is an option, but I'm not seeing a lot of everything together. It seems to be a lot of one or the other at the minute. Any comments on how?
I feel like Amber should ask.
Respectfully, I completely disagree because that's exactly what I'm doing. A big one for me is no gender labels, because I personally think they're becoming redundant, and clothes are clothes, and I would never want to put something on a piece of clothing that's going to make someone feel they're not allowed to wear it. And also, as someone who is not a size 6, there's also a lot of sustainable fashion that isn't available for people of a larger size, and you're forced into buying from Primark and Shein and places like that because they're the only places that make clothing in your size. So that's another thing I refuse to do. I'm never going to ask someone for more money because they need slightly more fabric to cover their body. Obviously, I'm going to keep myself alive as I'm in a business. You have to make enough to survive, but you don't need to exploit people. And it's all about balance as well. Like you said, some go one end or the other, and sometimes something I make might lean more towards one than the other, because you have to make choices. You can't tick every single box, but I think that balancing everything out as much as you can and just trying to do things in a way that doesn't negatively impact anyone is ultimately what I want to do. And just...
How would you make moves to make that more mainstream though? If you had a thought.
It is difficult. I think part of it is just being the change and slowly having conversations like this and opening people's eyes to what is, in my opinion, a lot of unnecessary stuff in the industry towards making it more inclusive and diverse. And it's not difficult. I don't know, maybe because I'm in these circles already, I find it easy to interact with people from a range of communities. But so I did a photo shoot for my initial collection, and it just took me a couple of days to find people from a variety of ages and genders and sexualities, orientations, etc., that wanted to be involved in this industry. Those people are out there. It's not that they don't want to be involved, it's that the industry has decided all we want to put out there is skinny, white, feminine presenting people. And it's not difficult, it's just slowly convincing people that representing these different groups is actually in their interest. If they want to make money, then you need to show these people that they're your consumer and you want... Sorry, I'm getting a bit worked up because this is exactly what, like, it just makes me angry because logically, to me, it makes sense that if I want people to buy my clothes, they should be represented in everything I'm doing. And as a business, why would you completely ignore a whole demographic that you could, like, logically, even if you're not coming at it from an angle of, I want to be inclusive because that's the correct human thing to do, like, even just from a I want to make money perspective, like, marketing, include these people, they want to buy your product. It's what you're taught when you do all this marketing stuff, and they completely ignore it because they're homophobic, racist, bigoted in some kind of way, and there's a lot more I could say about it, but that's probably not appropriate for this setting, to be honest. And it's not difficult. I think it can be done. I'm doing it, and anyone that tells you, in my mind, sustainability and inclusivity and diversity, it all goes hand in hand. It's one and the same. You can't look after the... Sustainability is about looking after the people on the planet, and if you're ignoring half of it, yeah, exactly. It's kind of a redundant conversation for me at this point, but I understand that, unfortunately, to a lot of people it's not, and it's wild to them. Why would we hire a black model? Because black people exist, because queer people exist, because fat people exist, and they deserve to be represented just as much as what we see all the time, unfortunately. So I could go on for hours and hours about this, to be honest. Yeah. It's very personal to me, as well as just something that should happen. Yeah.
Matilda, did you want to add to that?
About sustainability and like inclusivity. Yeah, I fit my garments to fit both men and women in like both ways. So I make it to kind of fit myself and make sure it's room enough if it's a pant for a male as well. And to make them last longer and fit most, I make them in kind of an oversized fit. So you don't need to like, you can still buy it, even though it's, I'm thinking I'm not having like a male section and a women's section. It's just like everything together.
Genderless.
Yeah. So, but that doesn't, I can still make a dress because everyone can wear the dresses. I don't care if you want to wear a dress, you should do that. But like, and I can still make more fitted clothes, but mainly it's oversized, seasonless. You can wear it in the winter as well as the summer. Yeah, sustainable and unisex. Yeah.
Janika, sorry first, and Emma.
No, I was just going to ask, I think everyone loosely uses the term sustainability. What is your personal definition of sustainability?
Oh.
Do we have to answer that? I don't know what to say.
That's a heavy question.
Thank you.
Oh, that's really hard. I don't think there is.
Like stuff,
Yeah.
like ethical clothing, sustainability, ethical clothing, they're sort of the same thing. But I think everyone's always using the term like, buy this is sustainable. Like,
It's lost its value.
Yeah,
The word has
definitely.
lost its value,
Yeah.
definitely.
But you kind of work with two brands, haven't you? One which was greenwashing par excellence, the definition of greenwashing. The other one showing that it's actually possible. There are people in the industry who are doing things the right way.
Yeah. It's difficult because I do often think to myself, if I want to be truly sustainable in fashion, should I be making any more clothes? If I want to be truly sustainable in this industry, I shouldn't make anything else. But then to change this industry, you've got to make the new things and show them a new way of doing it. But I think defining sustainability comes in so many ways. Like if you're talking about fashion, you could define sustainability purely in the product, the fabric, what fabric's made of, or you could define it in your demographics. So then if you want a sustainable garment, it should be for every demographic. Or you could look at sustainability in the sense of your ethics and the people behind it. I think it's much more complicated than just giving it an overall term. And I think, as Taryn said, there's a lot of greenwashing and people use that word when they're not, and it aggravates me so much. Like in that movie, she said the people who have now sustainable clothing, it's put out there in the industry as sustainable clothing. This is probably a bit bold for me to say. I don't believe that at all, that they're all sustainable. A lot of people put that tag on there to get the money, to make the business.
That's part of the issue. With no government or organisation regulation, I could make something that is all bad materials, but because I have one aspect of it that's considered sustainable, I'm allowed to call it sustainable. So it could be that the fabric was dead stock. It doesn't mean the impact of the garment's any good, or that there haven't been people mistreated in the supply chain, but because one aspect of it is, I'm allowed to call it sustainable fashion.
So basically we're saying the word sustainable is dead.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
I just think that rather than, for me, sustainability is more like use what I have. I don't need to buy anything to, if I, instead of, it's more exciting to find solutions with what you have, or instead of buying more, because if you buy more, they will produce more, even though, of everything, not just clothes, but other stuff as well.
I think if anything, what you guys show me is that in a way there can't be just the one single definition of sustainability, because it's inevitably a sort of movable feast as we're faced with lots of different complex problems, but also because it doesn't have one solution. So I think what you'll show
need a range of words
is that there are many potential ways of tackling it, and actually that is in a way the answer, is that it has to be a very diverse approach with many different solutions. That's kind of our only way out of it. Emma, and then Han again, final, I think, because we're approaching 6 o'clock.
Wind up. So I've got a question of inspiration. So who do you think is going to so where do you get your inspiration from? Who do you think is doing a good job, whether it's a designer, a brand, or somebody else, individually, please? Georgia.
I can't lie, it sounds like a real fangirl now, but I really do love what Amy Powney does in Mother of Pearl. I really like her approach to it, and I quite like as well when she says the background she came from. I appreciate that she wasn't, born in London and went to a private school, because a lot of fashion is very, I know when I went down to Graduate Fashion Week, people would be saying what are you here for? And I was very lucky to be shortlisted for an award, so I sat there and they listened to my voice. And they're like, you're not from London. Are you Central St Martin's? I was like, no, Uni of South Wales. They're like, what? Uni of South Wales? Who? I appreciate that aspect of it as well, that it's fashion from, I don't want to say a real person, but she started off on a normal level and she's just doing something that she's really passionate about. And I think that that's really important. So I take a lot of inspiration from how she approaches it, not necessarily, that her brand, and look, the brand's amazing, because what she does at the heart of it isn't I want this brand to be huge. It's I want to make a difference, whether that's big or small. So, yeah, so that's probably mine.
I can't think of any.
Not yourself. You can inspire yourself.
But I get inspired by doing stuff. like when I'm out and about, I can see something, but like I can see that shirt and I like some parts of it, but not all of it. I want to change something about it. So that's where I get many ideas, but I think it's more like, what do I need as well? What do I think is cool? Because I make sure I don't look too much online. I don't like it. It's just the same. And I work at home. I work as a home nurse. So all my patients are between 60 and 100. Their clothing is so much more interesting than what we can find now. So I think I look more into like archives and stuff. I try to look for inspiration from designers for this collection, but I just didn't know what to type. Like I don't follow trends. I don't follow stuff like that because I'm afraid that will kill my creativity as well. So I just don't expose myself to too much stuff. Yeah.
This might sound a bit corny, but nature. Nature's already created every solution to every problem that we are facing. The only reason nature is struggling now is because of human intervention. You know, they fix everything themselves, they do everything themselves, and they do it using a tiny amount of molecules in comparison to what humans use to solve issues. So it's like they already do everything perfectly. Why look anywhere else? Kind of thing, yeah.
People, for me, like being here today, like I'm now ready to go back and carry on making after having such a busy few weeks. Like I've been starting to be a bit drained, and you can't help but get to a point where you're making where you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you forget how much you love it. But then being with people like today and hearing what other people are doing, it just makes me motivated all over again. And seeing people work on what they love doing, it reminds me how much I love doing it, even if there are times where I get tired and fed up, and it's because I'm not giving myself enough breaks usually. But people, yeah.
Amazing. All answers, looking outside of fashion for inspiration to drive your practice as designers and as, I don't know, kind of like pushing those frontiers of fashion and figuring out what comes next. It's really inspiring to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to say a big thank you to our panellists today, Georgia, Matilda, Jess, Amber. Thank you so much for coming. It's lovely to have you back. And I hope to see you again in the future. It's so much fun to see what you're doing.